Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo. I've put this off for long enough. It's time that we talk about the Star Wars Battlefront beta, which happened this past weekend. It's already over with. It closed on Monday. They had an additional 24 hours to it, which I thought was a nice little touch for the fans, and also perhaps actually gave DICE and EA a little bit more data on the game. There's just a lot to talk about with Battlefront, alright? And admittedly, it was a game that disappointed me. My time with the beta was disappointing. Are there things about Star Wars Battlefront that are good? Yes, there are a few things that really stand out when you play Star Wars Battlefront. My time with the beta, first and foremost, highlighted just how beautiful this game actually is. From an audiovisual standpoint, Battlefront is a success. All of those assets that DICE was able to get directly from Disney, directly from the Star Wars Vault, have done this game well. I mean, you see that in Survival, you'll see it in the Walker Assault footage that I have. It's a gorgeous game. It looks great running in the Frostbite engine. And the audio is there as well. Everything about the sound will make you think of all of those awesome moments you remember from your favorite Star Wars films. But for me, that was really where the enjoyment ended. You know, playing as the characters, using the equipment, that was all a little bit of fun. But somehow, my time with the beta just managed to feel so damn dull. And now I know there are a few people out there who will probably say, well, it was a beta, Tony. No. When you play a beta, the essence of the game should still exist within those available modes. And when you look at Walker Assault, which is very much one of the primary, examples of what you should do in a multiplayer mode for Star Wars, I really like the idea behind Walker Assault. I even had a bit of fun with it. But at the end of the day, I can't see myself wanting to purchase this when November comes, and that disappoints me because I wanted Battlefront to be a game that I was just head over heels for. I wanted to play the beta and just say that I could not get enough of it. But honestly, after the first day of the beta and about 3 hours with the online and about another hour just messing about in survival mode, I really didn't have any interest to play the game further. There's a lot of really odd design choices, I feel, with Battlefront. Some of those may be an attempt to make the game more accessible, but I don't feel they've actually managed to do that in any way. Nothing about Battlefront felt more accessible than any other DICE game or any other first-person shooter that I can think of on the market right now that someone might choose to pick up come this November. There's a few small things that I want to point out, small details to me that were examples of accessibility, they're examples of an attempt to increase the accessibility of the experience, and I really don't think they've done anything. First and foremost, when we look at Walker Assault, actually, when we look at the game as a whole, the way power-ups are handled. So your character, whether you're in survival mode or in an online mode, has a set of cards. They have a hand with 3 cards in it. Those are your, go into the battlefield upgrades. It might be a jetpack, it might be a type of grenade launcher, and it might be like a personal shield. Those are unlocked by playing the game, and then they can be equipped in different hands that you can take into battlefield. Outside of that, there are power-ups that are picked up on the battlefield. Inside of survival mode, you have to capture landed pods and secure them to get any of these power-ups to actually see them drop. When you're out in multiplayer, in something like Walker Assault or, the simple capture objective that was also available in the beta, they're randomly spread throughout the map. And this is where I have a problem. When you're playing a PvP mode, an online game mode that, at its core, it may not be a competitive game, quote-unquote, it is still about competition. It's about beating the other team. And in the case of Walker Assault, you have an objective that is constantly advancing in one direction or the other depending on the team you're on. If you're in the Imperials, you're pushing forward, preventing the Rebels from holding uplinks, so your walkers, your AT-ATs, can make it towards the other side of the map to destroy their shield generators. If you're on the Rebels, you're trying to hold those uplinks so you can have Y-wing bombers in the air and B-wing bombers in the air, so then they can bomb those AT-ATs. That is always happening. That situation is always going back and forth. And in order for that situation to be successful, you need to control other elements on the battlefield. You need to control the hero characters. You need to have rocket launchers, maybe to take down AT-STs if you're on the Rebels. Maybe you need to get in X-Wings or TIE Fighters. You need these things to be successful, and the fact that they are randomly, cluttered throughout the map, to me, that just doesn't really make too much sense. I would much rather have saw a more traditional Battlefront style experience where these aircraft are available, they're on a certain respawn timer, the same sort of thing that we see in the Battlefield series. I don't know how the idea of random power-ups made the game any more accessible. I can understand the theory behind it, being that someone who's not as good as player A is not as good as player B, and therefore player B is more often going to get into a TIE fighter. Honestly, number one, I don't really have a problem with that. That is why Battlefront has always been so good, the old games, at making a more PvE experience. DICE is the one who decided to go all PvP on this, and then decided that they were going to make this big push for accessibility. Everyone gets to fly a TIE fighter, everyone gets to be, Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. I can understand it with the heroes, I really can, because to me, they didn't seem to turn the tide of the battle as much, and that's probably because a lot of people just didn't really understand how to control them yet. I could see some, issues occurring when people do finally start to understand how to use them. But things like the TIE fighters and, the bombers, those are a pretty important part of success in Walker Assault. And frankly, you need people who are well-equipped to fly those vehicles. You can't really have, the guy who doesn't know his up from his down flying a TIE fighter directly into the side of a mountain when he should be hunting down enemy B-Wings and A-Wings and things of that nature. It just didn't fully make sense to me, and there was nothing in my time spent with the Battlefront's PvP mode that made me say, yeah, that worked exactly like they planned. So that was really where I had a huge problem. And I know this is only the beta, and we don't have access to all of the game modes, but I did want to talk a little bit about the overall presentation of the modes in the beta, and, looking into the future of the game. And it's going to be very, very hard, I think. Actually, I know it's going to be very, very hard for fans of the Battlefront series to look at what is done with Battlefront 2015 from DICE and say, I'm okay with the missing content that has been available in Battlefront 1 and Battlefield 2. I'm okay with the missing experiences that made those games so good. Now, I'm not one to go along with the idea that you should just, look to the past and copy everything from there. No, I'm 100% on board with changing the way that a franchise worked, and I was hoping that Battlefront would be able to do that. It'd be able to bring back an original franchise in a different light with its focus on PvP. But Walker Assault and, like the drop pod generic capture game mode, they haven't really proven to me that they've been able to do that. So therefore, the lack of PvE modes, the ability to possibly play in huge, large-scale battles with my friends alongside me, rather than against another group of players, the lack of that is a bit disheartening, and I feel like there's huge amounts of missed potential here. That being said, am I still looking forward to playing the full game and seeing if they've learned from the beta, if they've learned from the feedback, if they can make the adequate changes to make this an exciting experience? Yes! For the first time, I probably will be picking up a game that, honestly, I'm not sold on yet because I have some small piece of hope that there will be, opportunities in the full release, modes that will be available to truly enhance this experience. That being said, more often than not when you play a beta for a game, especially a AAA beta, and I say that as a beta that literally went live about a month before the game's launch, I can't see this being that beneficial to the team. Maybe for small issues, resolving things like party issues and the partner system, and just fixing small tweaks and bugs here and there, but you're not going to make any substantial changes to the way the game works in a one-month time period. It just seemed like a silly point to have a beta. Back when they had that closed technical alpha, that's probably when they should have actually had the beta. It would have been nice to get the large amount of feedback that they got, past weekend, 3 months before launch, rather than 3 weeks before launch. So kind of silly to me on that. But as I was saying, when I play a beta like this, I expect them to give me a taste of what the game is going to be about, to give me the best bits of what the game will offer when the full retail release goes live. And if that's the case, Walker Assault, I feel like it could be a good mode. There's no denying, and even DICE has now admitted this, that mode is extremely unbalanced and the Rebels, more often than not, got completely stomped on. But I just didn't have a lot of fun with it. I mean, the presence was there, the atmosphere was there, you've got TIE fighters ripping through, all of the great Star Wars sound effects. Again, this is really what this game is riding on, in my opinion. And I've talked to people who don't critique games, as hardcore as I am. They're more casual people. They play their games, they play maybe 1-2 games, a year if they're lucky. but they're gamers. You know, they like to sit down, they like to play games. They just don't go out and buy every game under the sun. And they enjoyed Star Wars, they enjoyed Battlefront because of these things, because of the visual quality and because of the audio and because it felt and looked like Star Wars. But when I really tried to sit down and, you know, suck out of them whether or not they had fun with it, you know, they started to think to themselves and really see under the layers and say, yeah, you know, I can understand what you're saying. I couldn't really see myself playing that for an extended period of time. And that's a big uh-oh for a game that is player versus player. You know, the lifespan of this game depends on the community and their dedication to playing the game on a day-to-day basis, like is being done with Battlefield, like Call of Duty does, like Destiny does, like Halo does. They require communities that are interested in playing the game on an extended time frame, not just, you know, a month after launch. And that's going to be the interesting thing to see, is just how long the player basis can stay alive, or at least stay in the higher numbers, you know, 2-3 months after the launch of Battlefront. So Walker Assault, you know, a mode that I think, like I said, captured the essence of it all, but not a mode that I had fun with, and a lot of it did have to do with those random power-ups. There's ways that the game has been presented that I don't enjoy. Mechanics and, you know, pieces of game design that don't make sense to me. One of the biggest ones that really drove me up the wall was the way that the partner system works. So you no longer have the ability to join into a match like you would maybe in Battlefield. You know, obviously I'm going to reference a previous DICE game, or most modern multiplayer shooters these days. You look at, you know, outside of Battlefield, you look at something, you know, that's also more large scale, and usually you have squads, the ability to squad up with a fire team. You know, you play with up to 4 friends, you know, depending on the size of the game mode. It doesn't work like that in Battlefront. Rather than that, you actually create a party. That party can join you all in the game, but you'll only be partnered up with one other person, and then you can spawn on that partner. It's not a mechanic that I 100% understand. I don't know if it was done as a balancing thing to make sure that there was a limited number of players that could be spawned on per, you know, like, side. Because what it does is it breaks a lot of people up. Rather than, you know, having 4 people to spawn on, you have 1 person to spawn on. And if that person's dead, then you can't spawn on them, and you're forced to spawn at, like, a capture point or something like that. You know, just to me, it felt like a weird decision, and that was really what I was doing a lot of when I was playing the beta, was asking myself, why did they do this way? And then trying to figure out, you know, whether or not that change or that decision was actually beneficial to my gameplay experience. And often I was unable to answer that because you know, there's no way to really make a comparison. You know, I don't know what it would be like if we did have 4-player squads. You know, I can only judge on what I was able to experience inside of the game, and only having 1 player to spawn on made me feel very detached from the team. You know, at no point during my time with the beta did I ever feel like anyone on my team was connected. And it wasn't just because of a lack of communication, because I can play something like Battlefield, I can play something like Call of Duty with only 1 or 2 friends, and I can feel like our entire team is pushing towards the same objective. That was never the case in Walker Assault, and even in the drop zone capture mode, it just felt like no one really knew what the hell was going on. Now, I know it's early days, and people have to learn the game, they have to understand how it works, they have to understand what they should be capturing and when. But again, there were a lot of small changes in the game that seemed to be crafted for the sake of accessibility. And it doesn't seem like the game is any more accessible for that. It seems like people are still just as confused, and we're still dealing with that same classic problem when it comes to large-scale team-based games when playing in a public environment. Nothing has been cured there, and I think a lot of elements and components in the way that Battlefield or Battlefront is handled have actually made that even more challenging for people. Things just don't seem as clear. They feel really just, you know, clustered, and I personally didn't even understand what the hell was going on. Even after 2 hours of playing Walker Assault, there was still moments where I was just like, wait, like there's just doesn't feel like there's a clear sense of progress. You know, even once you understand everything, it just feels very blurry. Things just didn't feel connected. The team didn't feel like it was together, and I felt, despite being in this really large-scale 40-player battle, things felt barren and alone, you know? It felt empty at times. There were one or two moments, you know, where you get into a really solid firefight, and there'd be, you know, a great little Star Wars moment, TIE fighters reaping over, you know, sort of a Battlefront moment rather than a Battlefield moment, but those happened so rarely in my time with the beta, and that was a bit disappointing. Now, we do have one other set of things that we need to talk about, and that is everything else going on with Battlefront, right? They recently announced a $50 season pass. You know, this is interesting because I recently was reading a bunch of articles about how EA was saying, oh, we've had to make a bunch of changes in the way that we run our business to get the consumer back on board. And at that same time that article was being posted, you know, they announced a $50 season pass for Battlefront. Now, the one thing that I can't stand, I hate that Destiny is built around this, and I really hope this, you know, rumors of this new microtransactions equaling free DLC thing happens, is I hate when communities are separated. And it's going to be hilarious when DICE and EA actually have the nerve to sell map packs in DLC that further fragment what will probably be a very small community surrounding Battlefront. That's going to be freaking comical. I have no belief, no sort of, you know, trust that Battlefront's going to have a really big community a month after launch. I feel like it's going to dwindle fast. And then there's going to be EA and DICE asking you $50 for a season pass for some extra content. Now, I think all of this, when we start to look at it from, you know, what's the situation with DICE? Obviously, they have a publisher. The publisher makes decisions that sometimes they cannot change or alter or influence. On top of that, we have another game from EA and DICE that has yet again been developed under a very small development cycle, probably 2, maybe 3 years. And for whatever reason, DICE hasn't learned, EA hasn't learned that simply doesn't work for them. Battlefield 4 was a game that was developed in a 2-year development cycle, and it was a disaster. It took them forever to fix it, more than a year to clear up the problems and issues. Now, I didn't see a lot of the same bugs, although the party system was frankly a mess in the beta. The game did seem to play a little bit more consistent, and, you know, overall, it just seemed like it performed a little bit better than Battlefield 4 at launch, but to me, it's silly for them to just keep pushing this stuff out. This game could have used a longer development cycle. We probably could have saw the introduction of space battles. You know, the biggest issue is you look back at Battlefront 1, you look back at Battlefront 2, and you're like, they managed to do all of that way back when. Now, we have supposedly all of this great technology that managed to make this game real shiny and sound real good, yet we have half of the experience that was available in a game that released like 10 years ago. There's no denying that statement. There's no denying that comparison. I am completely on board with people who have made that comparison because it is 100% righteous. Why is something that exists now when we're supposed to have such great technology, things are supposed to be easier than ever for, you know, to develop games, how can we possibly have something that seems like it is so far beyond something that was created behind, I should say, I'm sorry, so far behind something that was created 10 years ago? And that is where a serious problem therein lies for me. Overall, Battlefront to me just felt like a disappointment. It feels like a bit of a mess. Do I want to see this game to exceed? Did I want to see it exceed? Did I want to fall in love with it? Of course I did. I wanted so damn badly to. I was one of the few people who refused to say anything until I got my hands on the beta, and now that I have, frankly, my heart has been broken just a little bit. Will people buy Battlefront? Will they enjoy it? Will they, you know, completely love the visuals and the audio design? I'm sure they will. I'm really sure they will, but I just feel like this is a game that is trying to get by on the fact that it has such great visuals and such great audio behind it all. I don't think that everyone is going to be okay with that. I think people are going to see through the smoke and mirrors, and I don't think that this game's going to do nearly as well as it could have. Honestly, all playing Battlefront did was make me really wish that Star Wars 1313 was able to be finished and that we could have actually saw something from that, because there are not enough great Star Wars games. And it disappoints me that for the first time we have something that is so audio-visually correct, and it's not really the spark that I was expecting. I know this has turned into a really lengthy 20-minute discussion, but I had a lot to say about Battlefront. I've been putting it off because I didn't know how to say all of it, and I'm sure I still didn't get the points across that I wanted to 100%, but I feel like I tackled most of them, and I want to make it very clear, as I said, to each their own, you know? I still feel that Battlefront is a well-built game. Like I said, you know, it looks great, it sounds great, it played very solid. The shooting mechanics were, you know, nice and clean cut. I actually enjoyed the way they handled scopes and weapons. All of that seemed to be, you know, okay with me. Playing as Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, that's all really fun, you know, that stuff works. I just don't feel like they managed to pull it all together. There's a lot of small fragments here of great ideas and, you know, great atmosphere and sound and video design, but it doesn't come together to make a really enjoyable gameplay experience. And that's why we play games. We play games for the gameplay. I don't think they managed to capture that all successfully. Like I said, my time with the beta, guys, I really don't know how much of this game could possibly change as we push forward into its full launch in November. And considering the fact that it's surrounded by releases like Fallout 4, best of luck to DICE and EA. Maybe this will be the game that will, you know, do terrible. It won't just sell because it was the sequel to a best-selling franchise for them. And maybe they'll finally take a look back at what they've been doing and recognize that they need to make some changes somewhere, somehow. If you guys have any personal thoughts about the Star Wars Battlefront beta, feel free to share them down in the comment section below with me. If you really enjoyed the beta, let me know why. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Share all of your thoughts and feelings with me down in the comment section below. And if you have any personal questions for me regarding my time with the beta or anything that I talked about in this video, as it was rather lengthy and I'm sure I got off topic, feel free to throw that down there as well, and I'll be sure to answer them. I'll see you guys in the next one.